From 13 ABC, Conklin and Company, with 13 ABC Action News anchor Lee Conklin. First, with what's happening behind the headlines. And Take 3, our panel of political analysts.
Morning, everybody. Welcome into another edition of Conklin and Company. Today on the program, and then there were 2, and then there were 12 vying to become mayor and city council members in the city of Toledo. We're going to break down all of that with Ignacio Messina, the Blade, coming up in Take 3. But first, the story that's dominated the headlines the last couple of weeks, and we anticipate it will dominate the headlines going forward. It is the crisis in Syria. A flurry of developments this week, the president's speech, and John Kerry goes to Switzerland to talk with the Russian negotiator over those chemical weapons. Our conversation late this week with Senator Sherrod Brown. Senator Brown, thanks very much for joining us. As we speak late in the week, Secretary of State Kerry and his counterpart negotiating in Switzerland now. I want to get you on the record as of today, where you stand as of the best options in Syria. President trying to make his case for a military strike and then backing off a bit. Where's Senator Brown stand as of right now?
Well, we've got to be cautious before we use military force. And I think the threat of military force hanging over the heads of Syria and Russia got Russia to the table to discuss this. I think it's in Russia's interest that these chemical weapons be done away with, because if the rebels overthrow Assad or the rebels overrun a military base, then those chemical weapons could fall into hands of people of insurgents or factions that are hostile to Russia and Iran. So I think it's in all of the regional countries, including us and Russia and Iran, all the countries that we do away with these chemical weapons. I think with the Russian, it's trust but verify for sure. But I think that we pursue this because there could be a good outcome, and we've got to exhaust all diplomatic channels before we resort to any military force here.
And that is the big question. You alluded to it. Can Russia, can Vladimir Putin specifically be trusted on all of this? There's a lot of rhetoric going back and forth, and a lot of criticism from Vladimir Putin on President Obama right now. Can he be trusted?
Yeah, we don't particularly trust Putin, and Putin doesn't particularly trust the United States. But we trust both countries to operate in their national interest. And I think Putin, we trust but verify. We work with the UN. If they decide they're not going to go along with what they said they would, if they break their word, then we move forward with what we have to do. But I think the Russians, I think it's in the Russians' interest to work with us here. I'm hopeful they will. I think we pursue as long as we can. The president asked us to have the military option, the threat of a military option out there, and that's the way we should operate now. I don't know that we want to ever use military force in this situation, but I think I think that we're going in the right direction now.
Can you truly stop Bashar Assad from hurting his own people without overthrowing him, or the rebels overthrowing him? Or is this a game that will go on into infinity here?
Our job as a country our role can't be to overthrow Assad. We've look at what happened and how long we were in Iraq because the government didn't tell us the truth, the last administration, and doctored evidence and all the things they did, and look at the price that so many Ohio families and American families paid. And the tax dollars that were wasted. So it's a question of containing what Assad's doing with chemical weapons, punishing him if we can, and do it without a major blowback. We're not going to overthrow that government. It's possible that the government falls of its own accord. We can assist the rebels. But I absolutely no to military. Our men and women being sent to Syria, absolutely no for any kind of long engagement of any kind.
The president really taking a lot of hits late this week, even post-speech to the country. Senator Portman, your colleague, or your colleague, I would say, has decided to oppose authorizing a military strike. But he says that the president appears very confused on the issue. And your response to that comment from Senator Portman?
Well, I compare this president to others who have taken us into war, who maybe weren't so sober-minded and took us into war when we shouldn't have been, and that's the bigger that's the I won't call it a crime, but that's the bigger mistake that rather than a president that I think's tried to be even-handed. I think this is a very difficult situation. I think the president's patience now is important, not to rush into this military strike, but to get the Russians to the table. We've done that. I think that's a good sign. Let's see how it plays out. Then 2 weeks from now, we may make a different decision. But this is going in the right direction today when it probably wasn't going in the right direction a week ago.
And we had some mixed messages. Senator Kerry saying there might have to be a limited number of boots on the ground. The president says no boots on the ground. Are you on the side where there should be no boots on the ground in Syria right now or in the future?
Under no circumstances do I envision or would I support sending troops to Syria. That's the danger of a military strike, is you don't know how it will end up. But the president and the vice president have assured us privately and publicly that there will not be boots on the ground, that this strike will be limited, both in intensity and in time and in the number of targets, and that this will not escalate into a war where we need to send troops. The answer to that is just a solid no.
Senator Sherrod Brown, thank you for being available. As always, we appreciate it. You take care.
Sure, of course. Thanks.
Senior Senator, Democrat Sherrod Brown, this past week, very late in the week, as talks continued between the United States and Russia over the chemical weapons issue. We did catch up. Our Washington Bureau caught up with a Republican member of Congress from our area. Take a look at that.
I'm here with Congressman Bob Latta. And Congressman, I want to get your impressions from the speech last night. After hearing it, did it change your mind at all?
Not really. The president from the very beginning has not articulated what the United States mission would be. We had a horrible atrocity that's been committed in Syria, a large loss of life. Over 100,000 people have been killed in the fighting already. But the president has not been able to go out and articulate to the American people what that mission should be. And, this atrocity occurred on August the 21st. He said early on that, we had an immediacy that we had to be doing, and now all of a sudden it's been pushed back. And last night he says, well, let's see what happens down the road.
Are we going to see a vote, or is it a lost cause, do you think, now?
Well, I think after hearing the president last night, because I think even last night the president was vacillating. And the question is, even from last night, where's he going? He was laying out something, but then all of a sudden he backtracked. And it comes down to that now that the president says, I don't want Congress to, going forward. So, you're not going to see Congress going forward. What we're seeing right now is what's going to happen between Russia and Syria. And is the United States even part of the discussions, or is the world part of the discussions on this now?
All right, well, we'll continue to watch it. Congressman Bob Latta, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
And reporting in Washington, Ted Fioraliso, 13 ABC Action News.
All right, and Ted, reporting with Congressman Latta, obviously the day after President Obama addressed the nation on the crisis in Syria. When we come back in just a minute, we're going to talk with a member, the leader of the Syrian media group here in Toledo, Amar Allo, will join us, and we'll break down how we got to this point when we come back on Conklin & Company in just a minute.